Hello viewers, welcome back to this NPTEL course on Education for Sustainable Development. So, today we will discuss a new topic, that is ESD for global partnership. It is related to SDG 17 Sustainable Development Goal 17. So, today we will be discussing about this thing. You can see some of the pictures of what the name implies, what the global partnership implies across the globe. So, across the sectors, across the population, across the groups, across the countries, etc. So, global partnership means how can we achieve it for sustainable development goal, and ultimately through this global partnership, the SDG 17, we can also achieve all the countries would be able to achieve all other 16 SDGs. So, in achieving other 16 SDGs, the SDG 17 can be a can be a network, can be an enabler, can be an enforcement, can be a that means network to help all the countries, both developing and developed countries, for achieving these all other 16 SDGs. So, as you can see, the global partnership for education, for business, for industry, for health, for all across all the sectors. So, the goal 17, as you can see, strengthen the means of implementation and revitalize the global partnership for sustainable development, and it automatically includes all the vital areas like finance, like in strengthening the finance resource mobilization, including your international support to the developing countries, domestic capacity, tax, and all kinds of other even revenue collections. So, that is in case of the financial transactions. Then technology also, in case of technology, that means innovation, technological innovation, international cooperation with regard to science and technology, access to technology innovation, enhancing the knowledge sharing network. So, all this with regard to sharing the technology and using the technology for enhancing this networking and partnership and achieving all other SDGs is also another domain. Similarly, third is the important area is capacity building. Capacity building for enabling the people, or enabling the people, or the or giving them some training on different skills, competencies, leaderships, etc., to empower and enhance the skills and competencies of our professionals, our students, our citizens, our sports persons, our health professionals. So, for in capacity building also we can have an partnership for the international partnership from north, south to south to all across the globe, east, west, etc. Similarly, the trade is also another important domain for to promote the universal trading systems, then trade trade facilitatory laws and the policies, the non-discriminatory and equitable multilateral trading system under the WTO, the World Trade Organizations. So, for giving all kinds of the trade, that means the trade policy should be user friendly, should be country friendly, so business friendly, so that the more and more investments can be done in the countries, within the countries, as well as the more and more export business can also be enhanced. So, the SDG 17, there are under SDG 17 also there are so many targets and indicators. So, there are, as you can see, 19 targets and 25 indicators are almost are there under SDG 7, which are related to one or other fields. So, SDG 17's vision is for strengthening and streamlining the cooperation between nation states, both developed countries, developing countries, east and west, southeast Asia, south, north, all kinds of things. That means to develop a SDG related shared framework and a shared vision for for working together in a very collaborative way, cohesive way, and way forward to achieve all the SDGs by 2030. So, this kind of network also it promotes the international trades, transactions, developing it also helps the developing countries, not just in terms of the business import and export trading policies, but also in financial resources for financial resources. So, that means to you can say to popularize, to advocate, to implement a kind of trading system which will be more rule based, more equitable, more universal in nature, to facilitate, to help the developing nations as well. So, as you can see from these pictures, so that is the like even though there are different groups all across the groups, there are different groups like G20, then SAARC, then NATO, and so many other international organizations are there. So, different groups are working under these groups, these are networks. So, again even though they are within the different networks, but how all these networks, how all these groups can be interconnected towards the common well-being and welfare of the planet Earth. So, now you can say then how to maximize the partnership, So, as per the Charles Darwin's definitions and statement, it is a long history of humankind that those who learn to collaborate and improve most effectively have prevailed. Like that means it promotes the collaborative learning, collaboration, cooperation. So, and that can give us the maximum output, maximum outcome for the effective well-being, happiness and prosperity in any country or across the globe. So, that is the Charles Darwin's principles, or I can say that his philosophy. So, that therefore, a sustainable development program or agenda it requires a partnership between the governments and private sector, civil society. So, it will be a multi-stakeholder partnership, as well as of course, politics, political parties, political situation of the country, the government, the governance, and the and you can say the philosophy or the world views of the particular government of a country, their international relations, then their business transactions, their networking, and then their ethos, their values and principles like the democratic values. All these kinds of things also matters a lot in developing that international network or the international bonding network and partnerships. So, automatically it comes into that, means how strong that bonding is, how strong that network is in shared vision, in shared goals, and in giving the priorities to people and people, planet and prosperity. So, these are all, and across the global, regional, national and the local level. So, that is the viewpoint of United Nations. So, how each and every country can make effort to enhance this kind of partnership by sharing their vision, mission, goals, values, universal laws, rules, regulation, as well as the business opportunities. So, therefore, but the thing is that all these ideas, technology, institutions and resources are already available, but how can we leverage this? How can we utilize it in a competitive advantage way? So, that is the main thing, that all the ideas, people, technology, institution, resources are already available, but how to engage them, how to utilize them, how to combine them in new and transformational way, so that we can achieve or we can maximize the partnership, global partnership impact. So, that is the primary objective. So, the 2030 agenda partnership that it primarily focuses on global partnership. So, other agencies across the globe, other agencies also they have collaborated with that, like United Nations Department of Social and Economic Affairs, UN DESA, and the partnering initiative, then the collaborating other United Nations office for the agencies, partnership, all kinds of UN agencies, global agencies, even the global United Nations Higher Education Council, UNICEF, UNDP, all kinds of agencies, global agencies and organizations, they have also joined together to this UNESCO SDGs 2030 or 2030 agenda. So, it is a kind of multilateral, multi-stakeholder, multi-country global partnership model. So, as you can see from this image, this framework, you can see this is the UNESCO framework. First thing is that individuals with the partnering knowledge and skill, individuals with the partnering that according to different domain knowledge, skills, competencies, etc., different domain like maybe trade, maybe finance, maybe technology, etc. The individuals they will partner with similar kind of knowledge and skills first in one domain, then organizations that are fit for this partnering, then across the globe, maybe regional level, maybe national level or global level, which are the organizations that are fit for partnership, like because of their experience, because of their licensing, because of their reputation, because of their already developed competencies and resources, etc. So, thereafter partnership built to good practices and standards. So, how this partnership can be made to improvise, to enhance the efficacy and efficiency of our organizations, of our people, of our stakeholders. So, that is the major concern of this partnership. Then you can say the platforms of the mechanisms to systematically catalyze the partnership, how to take the maximum advantage, how to leverage this partnership, how to sustain this relationship, bonding and partnership. So, that is also another important factor, and the national and international policy supportive of that collaborations. So, if we discuss about the global network, global partnership, etc., but yes, at the United Nations level, at the global level, international level, some these kind of policies and should be supportive and equal and promote the collaboration across all the countries, across the globe. So, that has to be implemented by the central global agencies also, like UN and UNESCO and UN agencies. So, these are the primary working functional teams, functional sectors, domains of of UNESCO in partnerships and global partnership. So, the 2030 agenda and the essential roles of the partnership. Yes, what are the specific roles that has been prescribed in the guidebook of UNESCO? That is, as you can see, the ladders, the levels. Like first, this in the ground level, that is with regard to healthy environment, saving the planet, etc. These 4 domains, these 4 SDGs are the platform. You can say that is life on Earth. That is SDG 15, 14, and 6 and 13. Climate change. So, these are the basic 4 SDGs which are related to planet Earth or environment, sustainable environment. So, the partners who will be working on this domain. Then second, then thereafter, after taking care of the ecosystem, then how the society can thrive, how the society can thrive, community well-being and prosperity can happen. So, they are here more than here all these 8 SDGs, like SDG 7 that is related to energy, SDG 16 related to justice, SDG 1 that is no poverty, SDG 11 that is infrastructure, quality education, then health and well-being, then your gender equality, then you can say zero hunger. All these 8 SDGs are to be worked upon, are to be taken care of through partnership and collaboration for prosperity, thrive for social development, that is the development of our society, communities, cities and the humanity, you can say. So, thereafter the economic prosperity, that is the prosperous economy. After that, after achieving, so once we have achieved all this up to this level, that is all these 8 plus 4, 8, 12 SDGs, then the rest SDGs, like we can say rest 5 SDG, that will determine, you can say, the prosperity of the economy. So, you can say SDG 8 related to decent work jobs, SDG 9, then SDG 10 and SDG 12. But however, as you can see in this picture, this is the SDG, that 17, SDG 17, that the partnership, you can say this is the spinal cord, this is the, you can say, spinal cord of all these things. So, SDG 17 carries the responsibility of of achieving all the 16 other agencies and through networks of global partnership across the globe. So, you can say the major responsibility lies on the SDG 17, the countries which become very efficient in strengthening their bonding, their network and with other countries across the globe, and enhance their skills, competencies, financial resources, then through trading, through technology, through through innovations, all these things. So, then they definitely they are going to achieve all these agendas, all these 2030 agenda as early as possible as the goal. So, however, like the ESD plays a major key role in in spreading the awareness, creating the awareness, enabling the people, educating the people, informing the people, etc. That means ESD, it starts to function from the grassroots level in achieving this healthy environment, achieving this thriving society, and in also achieving the prosperous economy. So, that is, you can say, that is the nervous system, and this is the spinal cord. As you can see, this SDG 17 is the spinal cord, and ESD is the, you can say, the nervous system of the whole thing. That means, from the ESD itself, it begins from the grassroots level. Okay. So, this like ESD, how can, again, for global partnership also we need to utilize our ESD, and strengthen our ESD framework, ESD curriculum, ESD how it can be blended in our service sector, industry, manufacturing sector, in our education system, in our health system. So, ESD should be perfectly blended all across these 3 levels, so that we can be very strong in SDG 17 in establishing our networks and collaborations with other partner institutions. So, how what then? So, here the you can say the focus areas, you can say we have to internalize, we have to realize that all these all these sectors like business, society, environment, health, prosperity, everything is these are all interconnected. So, interconnectedness of all these SDGs. Then social sectors including the business sectors, these are recognized as the key development actors, because automatically everything it depends on the education and the financial resources, human resource and financial resources. Therefore, education is very much important, as well as for the social development and you can say for environmental development also we need to have the sufficient amount of the financial resources to implement all the policies and take the execute the action plan. So, social sectors including the business also, it organizes the key development factors or the plays as key development actor in this solution. The need for collaboration is very much essential across the social sectors, within the country, within the region, within the nation, in between the nation, regional bodies, the regional and the local bodies. So, that is here we need to focus on the holistic approach, the macro approach, like thinking globally and acting locally. That means we need to take care of the local challenges, local needs and emergencies. At the same time, we must have the holistic vision of holistic approach of or you can say systems thinking in a larger perspective across the globe. So and for that we need to invest on the transformational change. That means, yes, change is inevitable. We have to change everywhere there should be change, and we have to we have to welcome change, we have to accept the change, but the change should be transformational in the sense that it can bring the positive transformation, 300-degree, 60-degree transformation. So, how to how to implement, how to enable, how to activate this transformational change. For that, not only we need education and educational tools, experts, training, etc., but also we need huge investment. Okay. So, therefore, this the two primary domains are health and education. We need to invest a lot. So, health, education, and thereafter business. So, these are the primary investments required, the investment required in these areas to bring the transformational change in the society. And of course, need for the innovative approach. That means, always we should have, all of us, we should have an innovative thinking, innovative approach, innovative way of not just about the products, but also in service, in practices, in even rules, regulation and day-to-day transactions. So, how to deal with the complexities, how to take the take the greater risk, a risk of failure, how to face it, how to mitigate the challenges, how to resolve the conflicts, how to resolve the dilemmas, all kinds. For everything we need to have an innovative approach, a creative outlook towards meeting not just the challenges, but also creating more opportunities. So, then thereafter another is emergent planning. We must have a always ready-made backup plan for dealing with any kind of disaster, any kind of risk in and around our surrounding and environment. So, these are some of the key themes, key areas that are related to partnership, strengthening the partnership. So, 2030 agenda of essential roles of partnership are related to this, how to strengthen the interconnectedness and all these things, how to work together. Then I can say understanding the different stakeholders again. So, in this partnership also there are different stakeholders. So, you can say it is a multi-stakeholder partnership. So, here we can say that the government is definitely in any partnership, government is a major stakeholder. Government is a major stakeholder, and under the government's dimension, what are the things like democratic representation of people, delivering national defense, law and order, collection of the taxes, then you can say rules, regulation, banking system, provide the public services, a public infrastructure, business policies, environmental rules and policies and regulation for the trades and the export business. All these things comes under the government's domain, government's responsibility. Then business, and some of the business houses like the private sector. So, private sector business are also there who can directly invest. So, and in terms of the partnership, so to take the financial. So, what is the rules and regulation of that distribution of goods, services, and for the public, and how they can, what is the whole system of the process of or supply chain of that transaction. Then to make the financial profit for the investors and the owners, and again how can they invest a percentage of their profit in the social activities in these SDG areas. So, these are the, so business organizations, they can be a partner, they can be a stakeholder, government can be a stakeholder. Similarly, civil society is also stakeholder, is a major society is also a major stakeholder in terms of especially the international NGOs, regional or national level NGOs in for example, in the distributing and giving the access to international knowledge, resources, technical knowledge, delivery capacity, deep knowledge, social, enhancing the social capital, influencing the different organizations, and how to engage the people, educating people, and advocating for different minority sections, or you can say advocating for different deprived group or disadvantaged groups. So, NGO, civil society in terms of primarily NGOs participation also is a major stakeholder. Then United Nations role. United Nations role is to support the governments in building and strengthening the national capacities, and also helping out the organization, helping out the government, different governments in enabling in delivering and achieving the national agenda, also promoting sustainable development, and of course, definitely delivering the humanitarian aids in case of the emergency, like for example, presently this in Ukraine war, or in kind of any natural calamity or any disaster, or even in COVID-19 pandemic also, how to reach out to the people and in delivering the humanitarian aid like food, medicines, clothes, etc. kind of things. So, and take care of holding the human rights in case of every individual's in civil rights in terms of equality and access to resources, etc. So, upholding the human rights, then upholding the international law to maintain the peace, security, and social justice in the country. So, these are the major stakeholders like government, business organizations, civil society, and United Nations. Besides that, also some of the foundations are also working on it, like like Bill Gates Foundations, Clinton Foundation, all you can say the Nelson Mandela Foundation, and all other international organizations or the foundations. So, they also work in this area of either in technical assistance or in funding or running the social service programs, education programs, health programs. So, they are also a source of funding to deliver this kind of fundamental goals. So, development corporations like donors are also there, some of the funding agencies are there, political connections to, and influence can also help us, then technical assistance can help us. So, to coordinate all these donations. So, other stakeholders are like our media, our academia, different kinds of yes, parliamentarians are there, trade unions are there, different and industrial organizations are also there. So, there are also other stakeholders. So, how all these stakeholders can contribute substantially to strengthen this international global partnership network to achieve all other 16 SDGs for every nation, every country, and every zone, or every you can say continent of this world. So, now how this partnership journey will be like this, like the past partnership journey to action, like initially some kind of agreement will be there, formal agreement will be there, then thereafter the post agreement journey will start. So, innovative thinking and planning will be a part of brainstorming session there. There are formal procedures, formal meetings, and operational process, then implementation of the challenges to become evident, how these plans and decisions and policies are being implemented to face the challenges like the natural calamities or the global challenges like pandemic or war like situation, or you can say drought in African countries, or any natural calamity also that has to be visible. Then settling in the management system, how this can be formalized in the management system, and then the performance. So, this is the whole process, it is a journey of from step 1 to step 2, like you can say First is that need of the first to assess the need of the population, need of the stakeholders, then average average overarching vision, then thereafter a common purpose and mission will be framed, then thereafter agree specific objectives and activities, then to agree upon the resources, roles, responsibilities, then rules and regulations, then how to structure this partnership and etc., then signing an agreement partnership process, and thereafter all these action plans and the journeys and the events will take place. So, similarly in education also partner universities are the nowadays we are having these MOUs, different international organizations, business houses, corporate houses, then even universities also. So, in terms of sharing our knowledge, technology, innovation and business practices, everything. So, partnership can be at every level, be it education, be it health, be it business, be it international cooperation with regard to the at the government level, also at the government level for national for fulfilling the agendas, 2030 agendas for every country. So, at different level with different focusing on some of the specific objectives, goals, be it business or health or etc., focusing on specific objectives and goals, then there can be different partnership groups, partnership models, partnership committees and summits. So, accordingly they can work upon. So, once the agreement is signed, then thereafter all the action process will start. So, this is the you can say the partnership journey, whole process of partnership journey. So, now here looking back at into the our country like in India. So, way back during the pre-independence, since pre-independence era, these ideas and relevance were already there from the Mahatma Gandhi's philosophy, like for example, non-violence, freedom movement of India. These are the you can say these are the we can say these are the demos for this global partnership or national cooperation and international peace, etc. So, automatically it creates a kind of political scenario of the world, and our policy of freedom movement or non-violence and the peace and justice, etc. These are already there as a as a major, you can say major brand, you can say a major brand, you can say a model of international understanding, cooperation for the good and well-being of community, non-cooperation for the evil and arbitration. These kind of the practices and philosophies were already there in our freedom movement advocated by Mahatma Gandhi. So, how can we implement these in our present context also for in a sustainable development scenario also? Like this idea of trusteeships and corporate social responsibility. So, Mahatma Gandhi Gandhiji has already introduced this kind of idea of trusteeship, because he since his freedom movement days, he has already advocated that wealth should be distributed, should be used for the betterment of the humanity rather than for personal indulgence. He has already advocated for this, and you can say during this pre-independence era itself. So, similarly how this all this is his philosophy being self-sustainable, like depending like all being self-sufficient in food, self-sufficient in clothing, in self-sufficient in our day-to-day usable goods. So, the Gandhiji has already taught us regarding this being sustainable and self-sustainability. So, this is how to develop for a betterment, how to bring the betterment and positive changes in the society. So, the idea this trusteeship has already been put forward by Gandhiji since long, so more than 100 years. So, now these trusteeships, the business tycoons, they have given their wealth for the uplifting of the society's mass and community. So, like all these business houses like the Tatas, the Birlas and all other old or premier industrial houses, they have already built up so many trustees. Now, these trusteeship this trusteeship now has been converted to as in the more formal way as the corporate social responsibility. Now, this CSR initially it was voluntary, but now since long it has been made the mandatory component of all the business houses and profit making agencies. Like from that profit, I think the 2% of their profit they have to invest in the society for social development, community development. So, any of the area of the sustainable development, either health, education, environment, whatever. So, the SDG pillars and how these Gandhian ideals, how these SDG pillars and Gandhian ideals can be perfectly blended. Like as you can see, the Gandhi's ideas of ethical living, value based approach, sustainable consumption, sustainable production, automatically it also relates to our SDG goals. Similarly, technique of non-violent protest and the technique of satyagraha. Also, it also carries the means of combating any kind of social and environmental threats, risk taking. So, how this Gandhi's philosophy can be perfectly blended in the sustainable development. As you can see, in environmental model, like a viable natural environment, for that sustainable natural and the natural and built environment is very much required, and sustainable economic development. Then social, in nurturing social development, you also Gandhiji has Gandhiji Swachha, Gandhiji's, you can say, that is Swachha Bharat, clean community, nurturing the community, then economic, that self-sufficient economy in terms of self-sustainability, taking care self-sustainability in food, then education and health, etc. So, equitable social environment in terms of justice, etc. So, this Gandhian philosophy can also be perfectly blended in sustainable development framework in this triple bottom line pyramid. So, and it will help us, especially for us, for the country like India and Indians. We can get the maximum benefit of this Gandhian model for sustainable development. So, how we can perfectly blend, because since long Gandhiji has already advocated for sustainable consumption, this propagating this khadis and the country, that is our own indigenous products, khadis, and all kinds of indigenous practices, like handicrafts, through agriculture to medicine to everything. So, these things, I think we already have this heritage, tradition and heritage of sustainable living and practices, through that we can perfectly blend with our 17 SDGs goals. So, then it can help us in enable us in achieving the all other sustainable 16 goals, as well as the 17 that is sustainable development goal partnership, global partnership. Now, I am just completing it right now. In the next class, we will continue with this topic. Thank you.